You know what? The phrases like, this is the best build, or meta-defining, they get kind of thrown around a lot these days. Half the time they turn out to be actually distinctly average. This Warlock build, however, I feel is probably the best you can get. I've been refining it throughout the week, to the point where you can steamroll the frontiers on highest difficulty solo, and also has no problem in any other PvE content. All gameplay will be at Grandmaster difficulty, either Frontier or Conquest. For every part of the setup, be it subclass choices, weaponry or mods, it has multiple connections to other build crafting choices intentionally, creating a web of synergy which may not be originally expected to work. For example, did you know that the artifact mod Swordstorm combo actually benefits Stormtrance, as long as you have Devour, by weakening everything around you passively? Or a Threadling Grenade is secretly a super regen choice, because it gives you a free class ability cast with Weaver's Call, which goes on to activate Dynamo and Distribution. With everything connected though, where do we start? I guess the super? Because it's a Star Wars themed expansion, you have to run Stormtrance, that's just the rules. Nah, it's not that, but it is really good now with Stormdancer's Brace, which got some strong buffs. Scoring kills will still build up Stormtrance's damage up to 200% at 30 stacks, but also stacks are now gained on every single hit, meaning that the kill requirement isn't really there anymore. Making it both for ad clear monster, but also now fantastic for single target. To drive home the single target effectiveness, check out this. It builds up to over 3k DPS and 49k total damage across a single super usage. This is also only with a 15% temporary weaken. I assume some of you have seen Llama's super testing, and you know what was at the top spot? It wasn't Behemoth, it wasn't Song of Flame, but it was Stormtrance. Per super used, you get the most damage. I know that total damage does not equal DPS, so that's kinda obvious enough, but as I've shown, the DPS is great too. And this is not really even using it as intended. When it comes to ad clear in activities like the Lawless Frontier, Stormtrance is completely unmatched. So far though, this is kind of base level. Stormtrance and Stormbracers can do more. So going into the synergies. Facet of Courage is one what's quite well known, I believe. Enemies affected by a darkness debuff take 10% more light ability damage. So if you are using Stormtrance against a chunkier target, be sure to throw in an Arcane Needle or Transcendent Grenade before going into Stormtrance. The question might be why use Prismatic over pure Arc, and this is definitely one of the reasons, but more will be shown throughout. Facet of Justice might be a bit more niche. While Transcendent, ability final blows cause targets to explode. The cool thing is this does actually work with Stormtrance. One of the features of this build is very high Transcendent uptime, and popping it before going into Stormtrance is absolutely not a waste, as it leads to many more explosions, making the ad clear super all the more ad clearier. Not sure that's a word. Swordstorm combo and Singularity Blade. So now we're going from niche to pure schizo strats. Going with 3 lights into a heavy with Praxic Blade, activate Swordstorm combo, then you go directly into Stormtrance. You will notice the Blade Flurry effect remains, and if you have Devour, which don't worry about this, you absolutely will, just being near enemies will weaken them. This has a somewhat short duration, but can be extended if the Blade Flurry lands a final blow. Being in Stormtrance and being able to blink into a group of adds, and them all being instantly weakened is peak. It's also just adding that little bit of extra damage. Finally, a few miscellaneous points for Super and Stormdancers. There is an effect from Stormdancers now, where when amplified, arc ability hits grant 1x bulk charge. Stormtrance itself does actually count for this. And also for the amplified part, don't worry about it at all, as it is granted automatically on super cast. And Stormdancers can return super energy after the super's used up. But this is kill dependent. So if you want the up to 30% return, you have to be sure to take out adds, not solely use this just for boss DPS. Praxic Blade is the next part and is absolutely critical. It does more than any other weapon I've used before. Some of this does come from artifact support, mods and armor set effects, but even more comes from just how you build the sword. So here's what you need. First thing to do if you haven't already, hop back into the Fire and Ice mission and grab the Catalyst Hyper Blade. This one's just OP. Block any damage to become amplified. This being the best elemental buff, which provides a 15% damage resist and turns enemies into actual stormtroopers with their aim rather than just kind of looking like them. And also, if you block damage, the next light attack will have much further lunge distance, like an eager edge swing, which is really useful in jumping between groups of enemies or closing the gap. Next up, Impact Core is definitely the play. Since an arc super is equipped, a hit will grant a stack of bulk charge. If you do the 3 light into 1 heavy combo, it will grant increased bulk charge stacks as the heavy attack has multiple hits, granting 5 at once. Also, Praxic Blade can discharge bulk charge by itself, no ability required. Remember that once you have an initial stack of bulk charge, any damage can grant further stacks, so you will gain more than 1 per hit overall, especially if you weave in abilities. I like Forceful Blade and Balance Form in the other customizable slots to maximise offensive powers, as the defensive capabilities are completely fine at base, and for colour pick red, this is the most important part. Praxic Blade synergies. Okay, the funniest one first, the Duck Hunt combo. Run Kinetic Ruptures and the refurbished A499 Sniper. Each 3 light 1 heavy sword combo will be enough to spawn a rupture. If you shoot this with the sniper, it will be a guaranteed crit and stagger the target, allowing you to weave in extra damage, especially helpful against targets with really hard to hit crits. Wyverns, yeah, mainly wyverns. For this to work most effectively, the sniper should have auto-loading holster. On artifact mods, kinetic synthesis is also a must. You deal damage with kinetic weapons and it will periodically spawn a kinetic ammo brick. This just allows for Praxic Blade to go infinite ammo. What's not to love here? Swordstorm combo and Singularity Blade, we've covered that, it's the extra damage and weaken spam combo. The other sword artifact mod is Combination Argent Blade. This requires you to wait between swipes to gain a 15% damage buff, but you can actually completely ignore that whole waiting thing, since there is natural charge time between the 3rd light attack into the heavy, long enough to passively proc this mod, so really it is just a passive 15% damage boost. Facet of Hope is a fragment this build utilises to refresh class abilities very quickly, which is very important as I'll go over later. But to be at max potency, it requires 2 elemental buffs. There's a lot more than this, but Praxic Blade can meet these requirements just by itself. You get amplified through blocking, then you get bulk charge through attacking. These count as 2 separate buffs. If you can, run TechSec. Since it is kinetic, it will deal more damage to shields with 2 pieces, and cause shockwaves alongside staggering enemies with 4 pieces. There's also the Swordmaster's armor set, where 2 pieces cause exhaustion on sword hit, and 4 pieces grant additional lingering damage resist upon blocking damage. However, the best armor set is not yet in game. It's likely coming with a dungeon, Sage Protector. 2 pieces sword hits grant grenade and melee energy, with 4 pieces if you block for extended periods. It grants swords extra damage and lunge distance. So the huge part of what makes this build work, and why I really want to use Prismatic over Arc, is these 4 parts. Weaver's Call, Phoenix Dive, Dynamo and Distribution. The idea is to get class ability cast back as fast as possible, and on top of a standard Weaver's Call interaction of generating just a bunch of Threadlings, and Phoenix Dive's Rapid Heal, each usage will also give a sizable chunk of ability energy, including Super. If you have 2 copies in Dynamo and Distribution, you will get this regen every single class ability. 12% Super and 6% to Grenade, Melee and Class. And to get class abilities back as quickly as possible, there's a few things to utilise. So there's that Facet of Hope for 60% additional regen. Also, Weaver's Call has a passive where Threadling hits generate class ability energy, which is convenient since these are spawned every time you use a class ability. But there's also a second passive. Dealing damage will generate Threadlings, anything can do this. It's just a permanent trickle of Threadlings, supplementing any damage you do, and reducing class cooldown. This is also quite potent to quickly build up Dark Transcendent energy. Also, run Threadling Grenade for good measure. If you throw a Threadling Grenade into a group of enemies, it's just an instant class regen. Remember that Storm Trance is pretty damn incredible now, so anything which can be done to reduce super cooldown should always be prioritised. So spam that Phoenix Dive. Alongside all of this ability spam, Feed the Void is the perfect pairing. And that's not to mention other Void buff based artifact support, leading to looping weaken effects. The best part here is that ability kills are so easy to come by with this setup, including random Threadlings, meaning you will always have access to Devour. Also, another benefit once you do have Devour is you get better grenade uptime too. I did try out just having weaken via Void nades to gain Devour that way, but it turns out nothing compares to the simplicity and improved heals Feed the Void provides. This time I'm doing a double emblem giveaway with both emblems available on screen now. To do this, I have my Discord linked in the description, and there you will find a channel called Emblem Giveaway. Just react to that post and a winner will be drawn. Also be sure to like the video and leave a comment with your favourite build so far. Now that is all major synergies out of the way I believe, but there's still more, so time to speedrun the rest of this build. Melee, you want Arcane Needle. This is an easy Forever Lasting Darkness debuff to use on large targets before casting super. Also on occasion throw this into groups of enemies to spread Unravel. Facet of Courage for increased super damage. Facet of Hope because casting class abilities as much as possible is the way. Facet of Protection to avoid becoming dead. Facet of Dawn because Arcane Needles are available quite often, you can also use them to gain Radiant. And Facet of Justice for the Kabloomies. Armor mods do matter here much more than most builds, mainly the double dynamo and distribution setup, but there's further optimization in here too. Stat wise, super is priority, aim high as there is only one available helmet slot for super fonts. Grenade and class at 100 is second priority. Grenade above 100 is nice to have, but not critical. Class above 100 doesn't really matter. So the full armor mod breakdown: helmet, double dynamo, 1 super font. You can use 1 kinetic siphon instead if you happen to have god tier armor distribution. Gloves, bolstering detonation and focusing strike. These are also important. They give class ability energy when you deal damage with grenades and melees respectively. Also use 1 copy of firepower for orb generation. Chest pieces old reliable. Boots, you want double kinetic surge and 1 copy of insulation, which is class ability on orb pickup. And on the class, 2 copies of distribution is an absolute must, and alongside this I used Reaper for orb gen. Also on orb gen, that is why I have the Tide Apex as an energy slot weapon. Alongside the fact that it provides light transcendent energy, it gives a lot of orbs. Just armor mods alone, orb gen is a bit mediocre, so an attrition weapon is nice to have. If I had the solar area denial with autoloading and attrition, I would probably be using that instead. And artifact mods I think I've pretty much covered throughout, but if you want a full list of what I used, here it is. And that is the best Warlock build in the game. What even is Scatter Grenade? If you made it this far and want to see more builds like this in the future, be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.